The year is 1880, and London, the largest city the world has ever seen, is beginning to put itself to bed. From the top of a hill at Dusk, from Hampstead or from Greenwich, you would see it happen. 4 million people, 100,000 streets and courts and lanes, all of it sinking into a blue haze of coal smoke and evening, and then, along one street after another, a chain of small golden lights coming on, one by one, in perfect order, as though the city were being stitched to the darkness with a bright thread. There is a man doing that. He is walking quickly, with a light ladder over his shoulder and a brass pole in his hand, and he has 80 lamps to light in the next hour, and he will do the same thing tomorrow and the day after, because he does it every single night of the year. This is history for sleep. Tonight we walk through gaslit London from dusk until dawn, the whole night, end to end, in the company of the people who keep it. The lamplighter on his round, the constable on his slow, measured beat, trying every door with his hand as he passes, the cabman dozing on his high seat at the stand, horse's nose in a bag, the coffee stall keeper at the kerb with her copper urns, the sorters at the great post office in St. Martin's-le-Grand, where the mails of an empire change trains at midnight, the bakers below the pavement, the compositors setting tomorrow's newspaper letter by letter, the market porters at Covent Garden building towers of baskets before the sky is light. 4 million people will sleep tonight. Tens of thousands will stay awake, quietly, competently, so that the sleeping is possible. Someone lights the dark, someone watches the door, someone is baking the morning's bread before the morning exists. Nothing frightening happens on our route tonight. We keep to the lit streets and the good company, and the night we walk through is the ordinary working, gentle night that most Londoners actually had, a city not of mysteries, but of routines, warm ones, repeated so faithfully for so many years that they wore grooves in the stone. And if stories like this help you drift off, subscribing helps me make more of them. Now the sun is nearly down, the shops are lighting their windows, and at the corner of a long street south of the river, a man with a ladder is looking up at the first lamp of his round. Let us begin where London's night begins, at lighting up time. Every evening, printed in the almanac and known to every gas company in London, there is an official minute at which the city must be lit. It moves with the sun early in December, late in June, and it is called lighting up time. And for the men of the lamp rounds, it is not a suggestion, but a starting gun. The contracts say the lamps will be burning within the hour, so at dusk, from every district lamp office at once, the lamplighter's go out across London like the start of a quiet race no spectator ever sees the whole of. Several hundred men, each with his own round of 70, 80, 90 lamps, each round walked in the same order every night, so that a housewife in any street in London could tell you within 5 minutes when her lamp would come on and would complain, and did, if it was late. Watch him work, because it is worth watching. At each iron column he sets his ladder, or, if he is one of the quick ones on a round of low lamps, he does not trouble with the ladder at all, just reaches up with the pole. At the top of the pole there is a small flame, a spirit lamp burning inside a brass guard, like a candle that has learned to live outdoors. He flips open the little door of the lantern, turns the gas cock with a twist of the pole's hook, touches the flame to the jet, and the lamp breathes in and comes alight. First a soft pop, then a wavering yellow tongue, then, as he trims the cock, the steady butterfly-shaped flame of London gaslight, the shape called the fishtail, burning open to the air. He shuts the little glass door on it, shoulders the pole, and is already walking. 20 seconds, perhaps, for a lamp that will now burn faithfully until he comes back to put it out, his own work, waiting for him at dawn on the same route, like a long row of small fires he privately owns. The light he leaves behind him is not our light. It would strike you, stepping out of this century into that one, as astonishingly gentle a warm amber pool at the foot of each column, then a stretch of soft dark, then the next pool, the street laid out ahead like stepping stones of gold across a river of shadow. Nobody reads a newspaper by a street lamp. It is not that kind of light. It is light for finding the way, for showing the curb and the corner and the face of the person passing, light as reassurance rather than illumination. And it has a colour no electric lamp has ever quite forgiven it for, yellow shading into honey, kind to worn coats and tired faces, the whole city after dark wearing candlelight the way a room does. By 1880 this is old, settled magic. London has been lighting itself with gas for nearly 70 years, since before Waterloo, when the first experimental lamps astonished crowds in Pall Mall, and pamphleteers argued that lighting streets by piped coal vapour was against nature and would surely end in the explosion of the entire metropolis. It did not end in explosion. It ended in the largest gasworks the world had seen, in thousands of miles of mains under the pavements, in whole companies, the Gaslight and Coke Company, the oldest and greatest of them, chartered all the way back in 1812, cooking coal by the shipload in ovens called retorts, day and night, to keep the pipes full. Under every street you will walk tonight there runs a slender iron artery of light, and the lamp columns stand over the mains like iron flowers grown up from a buried root. The lamplighter himself, Leary, the Scots call him, and the nurseries of England have borrowed the word, is one of the small fixed stars of the Victorian street. Children watch for him from windows. There are picture books about him. To the very small he is a kind of benevolent spirit who makes the evening safe by touching it. The men themselves would smile at that. It is a job, out in all weathers twice a day, dusk and dawn, rain running off the ladder, fog so thick some nights that a man feels his way from lamp to lamp along the railings of his own round like a sailor going hand over hand along a lifeline. But it is steady work, company work, with a wage every week and a route that is his men keep their rounds for 20 and 30 years and are known on them and greeted, and it is a poor sort of evening on which nobody says good night to the lamplighter. He is the first of tonight's quiet company, the man whose whole trade is to make the dark polite, and as his round ends, 80 lamps burning behind him, the last one lit at the top of the street where the omnibus turns the city, he has lit his changing shift. The day London and the night London pass each other in the amber light, the one going home, the other just setting out. The shops are shutting, the theatres are filling, and along 1,000 pavements at once, with a sound like the sea, London begins the long, rustling, gaslit business of its evening. Follow the light down the street of shops, and you can watch the day being folded away shutter by shutter. A London shop street at 8 in the evening is still half awake. The gas is burning bright inside the windows. Shopkeepers were among Gaslight's first and greediest customers, for a lit window sells, and a draper's plate glass at evening is a theatre of its own. Bolts of cloth tumbled in cascades, ribbons fanned like card hands, everything doubled by mirrors and warmed by the flames until wool looks like treasure. The late customers come and go, the clerk collecting his mended boots, the servant girl sent running for a forgotten half-pound of butter, the woman choosing tomorrow's joint at the butcher's with the seriousness the purchase deserves. Trade thins street by street, and then, at each shop in turn, the evening ritual begins. The boy brings out the shutters. Every shop has them, and every boy hates them, tall panels of wood, numbered in chalk on the back so they go up in order, slotted one by one into the iron channels above and below the window, until the bright glass is boarded blind, and the last panel locked home with a bar and a padlock. The gas inside goes down jet by jet. The shopkeeper steps out in his apron, looks left and right along the pavement in the immemorial manner of shopkeepers everywhere, and locks his door twice. Above him, as often as not, a light comes on. He lives over the shop as his father did, and his supper is waiting one flight of stairs above his till. It is a domestic, tucked-in sort of sound, the shutting of shops, wood sliding home, bolts shot, blinds drawn down over doors, repeated 10,000 times across the city in the space of an hour or two, and it changes the streets completely. The pavements dim as the shop windows go dark, and the gas lamps, which had rivals all evening, come into their own. Now the street belongs to their small gold pools and to the people still moving between them. And the people still moving are different people now. The errand boys are gone home. The clerks are gone home. What remains on the pavement after 9 is the night population, theatre-goers in their finery making for the lit porticos, late workers walking with the particular unhurried gait of those whose day is only beginning, and everywhere, unhurried above all, the man in the tall helmet and the heavy blue coat, walking at 2.5 miles an hour, trying the door of each shuttered shop with his hand as he passes. The shopkeepers sleep the better for him. Let us fall in step at a respectful distance, at his own pace, which will teach us the true speed of the night with the London constable on his beat. The pace is the first thing you notice, and the pace is the whole philosophy. A constable of the Metropolitan Police on night duty walks his beat at a regulation 2.5 miles an hour, a pace so deliberately slow that it has to be learned, drilled into new men on the parade ground, because no human being walks that slowly by nature. It is the pace of a man who is not going anywhere because he is already there. His destination is the walking itself. At 2.5 miles an hour, the eyes have time to touch every doorway, every window catch, every area railing. At 2.5 miles an hour, the whole street can hear you coming, which is precisely the point. The Victorian police night is built not on catching things but on preventing them, and prevention sounds exactly like this. Unhurried boots on stone, arriving every 20 minutes, all night, forever. His beat is small in the close streets, perhaps 1.5 miles of turnings, walked again and again through the night, so that he passes each point roughly every 20 or 30 minutes and knows to a shutter and a milk can what the street looked like last time. That knowledge is his real instrument. He carries almost nothing. A rattle in his early years and later a whistle to call for help. A short truncheon, he may go a whole career without drawing, and on his belt the famous bull's-eye lantern, a little oil-burning lighthouse of blackened tin with one thick lens, which he can shade to a slit or turn blazing on a doorway with a twist of his wrist. On winter nights he clips it to his belt, and the warmth of it against him is one of the small secret comforts of the service. The smell of hot lamp oil follows him down the street like a faithful dog, and he tries doors. This is the great nightly sacrament of the London beat. Every locked shop door on his route he tests with his hand as he passes a push, a rattle of the latch, onto the next. A conscientious man tries hundreds in a night. Nearly always the door is fast, as it was last night and will be tomorrow, and when one is not, when a bolt was forgotten by a tired apprentice, the constable's lantern goes over the doorway and the household above is knocked up, apologetic in nightcaps, and the shop is made fast, and the incident enters the great ledger of small preventions that never becomes a story anyone tells. The shopkeepers know the sound of him and set their watches by it. The servant girls know him. The cook at the corner house leaves a jug of something warm on the area steps on bitter nights, which regulations forbid him to accept, and which he accepts. The men of the night relief go on duty at 10 and walk until 6 in the morning, and the beat teaches them the city as nothing else could. Which chimney smokes first, which house has a new baby by the light in the upper window, which door sticks in wet weather. A good night constable is less a watchman than a kind of walking memory of the street, wound up every evening, and the street sleeps inside that memory the way a child sleeps in a house where footsteps are familiar. Behind him, at the section house or the blue lamped station, there is hot cocoa at the end of the shift, and a sergeant who will walk part of the round to meet him. and the whole slow clockwork of reliefs and section points by which 4 million sleepers are watched over by men walking, in the aggregate, thousands of miles of pavement every night between dusk and dawn. We shall meet him again before morning. Everyone on the night streets meets him again. But now the pavement ahead of us is filling with light and voices and the stamping of horses, because along the Strand the theatres are coming out, and London's evening is at its brightest just before it goes to bed. "11 o'clock on the Strand, and the doors of the theatres open altogether like sluice gates. Out they come under the gas globes of the porticos, hundreds upon hundreds of people released from make-believe into the night air, still humming the last chorus, still half in the lit world behind them, silk hats and opera cloaks at the grand houses, aprons and Sunday jackets from the galleries, everybody talking at once, nobody talking about anything that matters, that pleasant surf of after-theatre voices which is the same in every century that has theatres. The gas is at its work overhead, the big lamps of the porticos, the illuminated signs, the row of globes along the front of the supper rooms next door, whose proprietors know exactly at what minute hunger follows the final curtain. For half an hour, the Strand is as bright and busy as noon, and the night trades converge on it from every side street like gulls on a returning fishing boat. First among them the cabs. They have been waiting all evening in the ranks, the smart two-wheeled hansoms, low-slung and quick, the driver perched up behind on his high seat with the reins going over the roof, and the sober four-wheeled growlers, the family cabs, roomy enough for luggage and grandmothers. Now the whole rank comes alive. Whips are stirred, nosebags come off, the horses lift their heads, and the theatre commissionaire's whistle begins its work. One blast for a hansom, two for a four-wheeler, the cabs coming up to the curb in turn as the linkman hands the parties in. The hansom is the fast boat of the London night, the gondola of London, as somebody has called it, and to be young and homeward at midnight behind a good horse, with the lamps sliding past the windows and the hoofbeats ringing off the shuttered shop fronts, is one of the century's quiet luxuries. For everyone else, there is the last omnibus. It waits at the corner, lamps lit, the conductor calling his route softly, no need to shout at this hour, and it fills with the gallery crowd, the shop assistants who stayed late, the sober majority of the night. The omnibus at midnight is a drowsy vehicle. The horses lean into the collar and settle to their steady pace. The straw on the floor rustles. The passengers sway together on the cushioned benches in a warm fugue of gas smell and damp wool, and more than one worked man, rocked by the wheels, sleeps past his corner tonight as every night, and is woken kindly by the conductor at the end of the road. Along its route, the city is going dark, house by house. By the time the last omnibus reaches its yard and the horses are unharnessed and led in to their mangers, the London it drove through has mostly gone to bed. Mostly, but not everywhere. Behind us, in the theatre we watched empty out, the evening is not quite finished being put away, and it is worth one look behind that curtain before we join the cabmen, because a theatre going to sleep is one of the tenderest sights the night has. Half an hour after the last carriage has rolled away from the portico, the theatre is a different building, perhaps the most changed building in all of night London. The house that held 2,000 people at 11 is empty at past. The great chandelier is out, and down on the stage, where a painted Venice stood an hour ago in full moonlight, the scene men are quietly taking the world apart. The flats rise into the dark above the stage or slide into their docks. Venice goes up into the flies in pieces without complaint. The furniture of the last act is carried off yawning, and the stage is swept. A stage is always swept last thing, like a shop by a man with a wide broom working methodically through the exact spot where 90 minutes ago the heroine was forgiven to music. The gasman makes his final round the whole time this is happening, and his round is the theatre's real good night. A theatre in the gaslight age burns light the way a liner burns coal. The footlights, the rows of battens above the stage, the wing lights, the house chandelier, hundreds upon hundreds of jets, all of them under the gasman's hand at his plate of taps in the wings, where he has stood all evening raising and lowering the light of moons and mornings on cue like a musician. Now he goes round with his lamp, turning off pipe after pipe, dropping the great rooms into darkness section by section, and lighting, last of all, the one small flame that will burn till morning, the pilot light over the stage, the little fixed jet the profession keeps burning all night in every theatre, so that the first man in tomorrow finds light waiting for him, and the building is never, even at 4 in the morning, entirely dark. Theatres are old-fashioned about the dark, as well they might be. A building whose trade is make-believe keeps a nightlight exactly like the nursery. Then the theatre sleeps, and only the housekeeper's family, high in their rooms under the roof, and the firemen of the nightly watch every big theatre keeps its own, remain inside with the mice and the hanging forests and the 2,000 empty seats facing the little flame. The cleaners will come before dawn with their pails. The box office will open at 10. Tonight's Venice will stand again tomorrow at 8 precisely, moonlight and all. Out in the side street, the stage door has shut behind the last dresser. The gas bracket above it is turned to a bead, and the immense communal lamplit dream that a theatre manufactures nightly is folded and put away on its shelves till called for, which is, when you think about it, precisely what you are about to do with the day you have had. The theatres know how nights are meant to end, gently, in good order, with a small light left burning. And now to the cab stand at last, and the kerb beside it, where a copper urn is steaming under a canvas awning, and the night's smallest and warmest institution is open for business. There are cab stands all over night London, appointed places marked by regulation, where the cabs wait in file for fares, and every stand after midnight becomes a little village of its own. The horses stand head down in their nose bags, blowing softly into the chaff, one hind foot tipped in the resting way of horses. The cabmen gather 2 or 3 together on the pavement, capes up against the damp, talking the low, unhurried talk of men who will be here till 3 and have known each other 20 years. Waiting is half the trade. A night cabman may crawl the kerb between fares or doze on his box, whip-socketed, an old rug over his knees, one ear tuned by long practice to the sound of a footstep that wants a cab. It is astonishing what a waiting cabman can sleep through and what he cannot. And near the bigger stands, since the middle of the 70s, there stands a small greenhouse on wheels, like a garden shed that has trotted into town, the cabman's shelter. Charitable gentlemen pitying the drivers who must wait long hours in all weathers, and hoping candidly to keep them out of the public houses, have built these shelters by subscription. A stove inside, a bench round the walls, a kettle always near the boil, newspapers, a caretaker frying bacon at a penny the rasher. No bigger than a horse and cart may occupy, says the regulation, and so a dozen big-coated men pack into a space the size of a small parlour, in a fog of steam and tobacco and toasted cheese, and it is as warm a room in every sense as any in London. There is a rule against swearing and a rule against gambling, both kept approximately. There is a copy of yesterday's paper. There is the immense settled comfort of a small warm room in a great cold city. Outside at the kerb, for everyone who is not a cabman, burns the coffee stall. It is a barrow with a canvas hood, 2 or 3 great cans of coffee kept hot over charcoal, thick china cups chained by custom if not by chains, a hand of bread and butter, slabs of cake under glass. The keeper, a man and his wife often, muffled to the eyes, or a widow who has kept this pitch for years and holds it by a tenure older than paper, serves the whole cast of the night in turn. The constable at the end of his stretch of beat, the cabman, the market-bound waggoner, the printer on his supper break, The pair of theatre-goers who walked home for the pleasure of it and are now regretting the pleasure. The early drover, the late reveller, everyone equal at the kerb with cold hands round hot china. A halfpenny the small cup, a penny the large, bread and butter a halfpenny. The stall opens when the public houses close and stands till the working morning. Some pitches never close at all, and the urns go home only to be scoured. Stand here a moment with your cup, because this is the heart of the episode, at the hour when the city's pulse is slowest. Up and down the long street there is lamplight and silence, 4 stories of sleepers behind every dark facade. And at the kerb this one small lighted awning, hissing gently, smelling of coffee and charcoal, where the people who keep the night meet for 3 minutes at a time and speak in low voices, because everyone around them is asleep, and everyone here is, in a manner of speaking, on duty at the same bedside. Nobody organized this. No act of Parliament decreed the coffee stall. The night city simply grew itself a hearth wherever the watchers needed one, and now, cup drained and set down with a chink on the board, the watchers move on, and so do we, following the long whistle that has just sounded far off from the last train of the night. Every railway in London has its last train, and every last train has its own small congregation, gathered under the great glass roof of the terminus at the platform gate, the theatre party that cut it fine and is delighted with itself, the commercial traveller with his cases of samples, home at last from a fortnight of other towns, the pair of servants returning from a rare evening off, out of breath, the man who fell asleep at his club. The terminus at midnight is the daytime station with the volume turned nearly to nothing, the same immense arch of iron and glass that roars at 9 in the morning now holds its sounds up to the roof one at a time, a trolley's wheels, a carriage door's clap, a porter's unhurried boots, each arriving distinct and rounded, the way sounds are in a cathedral after the congregation has gone. The last train goes out with a kind of ceremony. Doors are shut down its length, clap, 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 growing fainter toward the far end. The guard shows his green lamp, the engine answers with a short breath of steam, and the lit carriages slide out from under the roof into the open night, gathering way past the signal gantries where the red and green lamps burn in rows like low constellations. Over the points, out along the viaducts above the sleeping streets, a string of lit windows travelling through the dark, carrying its dozing passengers out to the suburbs, each of them to be set down at a small gaslit station and to walk home down an empty road under the stars. Seen from a bedroom window, a last train passing is one of the good sounds of the century's nights. The far-off beat of the engine, the long diminishing rush, the whistle at the crossing carried on the wind, then the quiet again, closing like water. It is the sound of the world still working, at a comfortable distance, run by somebody else. Behind it, the terminus banks its fires for the night. The booking office grills come down, the great boards are wiped. The last engine backs its empty carriages away to the sidings, where the carriage cleaners go through them by lamplight, gathering the day's leavings, gloves, newspapers, a forgotten umbrella that will begin tomorrow in the lost property office. In the engine sheds, the locomotives stand in rows over the ash pits, fires dropped, boilers ticking and easing as the metal cools, breathing the last of their steam up into the dark roof, while the night fitters go along them with lamps and long-spouted oil cans, tapping, listening, oiling round physicians on their night rounds, if you like, with patients of 80 tons. And in the signal boxes strung out along the silent lines, the night signalman men we made a whole evening with once, on another line, in another episode, keep their lamplit vigils over levers mostly at rest, teapot on the stove, block bells quiet, waiting for the fish trains and the mails and the newspaper specials that are the night railway's real business. The passengers' railway sleeps. The working railway merely lowers its voice. We shall hear those night trains again before morning, the males above all, because the next door on our walk opens on the place they are all loaded for. But first, since we are passing them anyway, in the streets around the terminus, it is worth looking in at the doors that never close at all. A great hotel at 1 in the morning keeps exactly one lamp of its daytime blaze, the one over the night porter's desk. He has the whole marbled acreage of the entrance hall to himself, a solid, unhasty, all-knowing man, the night's ambassador, who will between now and 6 admit the late arrivals off the boat train, produce a candle and a chop for a traveller who has eaten nothing since Paris, settle the gentleman in number 40 who cannot sleep and wishes to say so to someone, take charge of boots left at every door down every corridor and send them below to be cleaned by morning, and answer, with perfect courtesy, at 3:30, the question of what time it is. The hotel above him is a honeycomb of sleep, hundreds of strangers, each behind a numbered door, each with their boots out and their orders for the morning written on a card, and the night porter sits at the bottom of it all, like the keeper of a quiet hive, wide awake on the ground floor, so that no one else on any floor needs to be. The clubs of Pall Mall and St. James's keep the same faith on a smaller, richer scale. Past midnight, the club is nearly empty. A member or two asleep over the embers in the library. It is against the rules to sleep in the library, and it is the most broken rule in London. A pair of old friends finishing an argument begun in 1862, the whist room's last table playing out its rubber in a silence you could bottle. The club servants wait it out with the patience of their calling, and one by one the members are helped into their coats and seen into their cabs, and the great door is bolted behind the last of them. And then the club, like the great houses we visited in another episode, is the servants alone. Lamps out room by room, fires raked, plate locked away, the night porter in his hooded leather chair by the door, that wonderful piece of furniture, half sentry box and half bed, built precisely for the purpose of sleeping at one's post, honourably settling in with the door keys on their ring at his belt. And eastward down the river, at 10 o'clock it happened while we were watching the theatres come out, and happens every night whether anyone watches or not. The oldest good night in England was said at the Tower of London. The ceremony of the keys, they call it, the chief warder in his bonnet, carrying a lantern, and the king's tonight the queen's keys, going round with an escort of soldiers to lock the outer gates in order, challenged in the dark at the bloody tower archway by the sentry who goes there. Keys. Whose keys? Queen Victoria's keys. Pass, all's well, and the guard presenting arms, and the last post carried away thin and silver on the river air, and the keys lodged for the night. They have locked the tower this way every single night without one failure, for the better part of 500 years, through plague years and fire years, and every alarm of every century, and they will do it again tomorrow at 10 exactly. It is the whole night city in one small ceremony, the same doors, the same words, the same hour, kept so long and so faithfully that the keeping has outlived every reason anyone first had for it, and become simply what the place is. London is full of such clockwork made of people. Tonight we have been meeting them one at a time, now eastward still, past the dark warehouses, to the one building in London where midnight is the busiest hour of the 24. In the middle of the sleeping city, a quarter of a mile north of St. Paul's, stands a building that has quietly inverted the day. The General Post Office at St. Martin's-le-Grand, headquarters of the Royal Mail, where the busiest hour of the 24 begins when everyone else's ends. All evening the mails of London have been flowing toward it. The pillar boxes on the corners, those stout red sentries, a novelty of the last 30 years, have been emptied on the late collections, the postmen coming round with their sacks and their keys while the theatres were still playing. The receiving officers have sent in their bags, and by 10 o'clock the letters are arriving at the great hall by the van load, sack upon sack upon sack, to be shot out onto the long sorting tables under the gas. And there the night shift stands, hundreds of sorters in their shirt sleeves, and begins to deal the correspondence of an empire as though the whole world's writing desk had been upended over them, and they alone knew where everything went. It is sorting as a performance art. A practiced sorter reads an address in the time it takes to glance at it, the hand already moving, and deals the letter into its pigeonhole with a flick of the wrist, faster than a card player, hour after hour. This one for Edinburgh, this for a village in Devon, this for Bombay by Friday's packet from Southampton. This one addressed, in a child's enormous copperplate, to a grandmother in Yorkshire, misspelt and decipherable, and deciphered, because the blind officers, that is really what they are called, the men who solve the unreadable addresses, can find a house in England from 3 wrong words and a smudge. Letter by letter the chaos resolves into order, pigeonholes into bundles, bundles into bags, bags labelled, sealed with lead, and stacked for the roads, because the whole night operation now converges on a set of departures as fixed as the tides. The mails go out by train, and the trains do not wait. Between 8 and 9, and again toward midnight, the red vans rattle out of the yard for the great termini, Euston, Paddington, King's Cross, where the travelling post offices stand at the platforms, mail trains with sorting carriages, gaslit inside, fitted with pigeonholes and long tables, in which the sorting simply continues at 50 miles an hour through the sleeping counties. Down the length of England they will work through the small hours, a lit thread of industry drawn across the dark map. And at speed, without stopping, the carriages will do their conjuring trick, the mailbag for the small junction town hung out on an iron arm, snatched by the lineside net as the train roars through, and the town's own outgoing bag scooped up in exchange, the whole transaction over in a heartbeat of clatter, while the town sleeps beside its own station. A letter posted in London this evening will be on a breakfast table in Scotland tomorrow, and nobody at the breakfast table will think that remarkable, which is the surest sign of a miracle that has become a public utility. By 2 in the morning, the great hall is emptying. The last bags are gone to the last trains. The sorters get their tea. The post office at night is the empire's quietest boast. No drums, no flags, just the fact, renewed nightly, that 400 million words can be picked up, read, understood, and delivered while their writers are unconscious. Somewhere in the building a clerk is already pinning up the duty list for tomorrow night, which will be the same as tonight, which is the whole beauty of it. And under the pavements around St. Martin's-le-Grand, as the mail vans thin out, another night trade is coming to its busiest hour, one you can find in any street in London by kneeling at a grating and breathing in. Every London street of any size has a baker's shop, and nearly every baker's shop stands over its own underworld, the bakehouse, down the area steps, below the level of the pavement, where the oven never goes fully cold from one year's end to the next. If you stand on the pavement grating above it at 2 in the morning, warm air rises past your ankles smelling of flour and yeast, and heat the single most comfortable smell the night streets have to offer, and from below comes the soft industrial music of the trade, the scrape of the peel on the oven floor, the thump of dough turned out on the board, a man singing quietly because the work goes better to a tune. The journeyman baker's night began while the theatres were still full. Between 10 and 11 he came down his steps, took off his coat, and woke the sponge, the great tub of flour and water and yeast set that afternoon, now risen under its cloth into a pale, breathing landscape. Then the real work, the dough made and kneaded by arm and fist in troughs the size of boats, half a sack at a time, an hour's labour that leaves a man warm on the coldest night. The dough set to prove by the oven side, the oven itself brought up to its heat, the fire raked out or the flues opened, the floor swabbed with a wet mop on a pole, tested with a handful of flour that must brown, not burn. Then shaping, the dough scaled off into loaves at speed, and by eye, a good hand throws a 2-pound loaf within a fraction, quartern loaves and cottage loaves, and the long tin bread, batch after batch, set in and drawn out on the long-handled peel, the loaves going in pale and shy and coming out golden and confident, filling the low brick room with that smell against which no hungry man has ever had a defence. It is hard, hot, upside-down work. The baker sleeps when the city eats and eats when it sleeps, and the trade's grievances about its hours are a standing subject in the newspapers of the day. But the trade also has its deep, unarguable dignity, older than the city itself. Bread is the one thing London cannot wake up without. 4 million breakfasts are being made possible down these area steps, batch by batch, all over the metropolis at once. The night bakers of London between them will draw something like 1 million loaves by morning. And when the shop above opens at 7, and the first customers come in with their pennies, the bread in the window will still be warm from a fire that was burning while they dreamed. The baker hears the shop bell through the floorboards as he finishes the last batch, and it is his good night. The city is waking. He can go to bed. He is not the only one working under the small hours toward a deadline of daylight. Half a mile away, off Fleet Street, whole buildings are lit and humming, and what they are baking is tomorrow morning itself. Fleet Street at 1 in the morning is the brightest dead end in London. The shops shuttered, the pavements empty, and above them, story upon story, the windows of the newspaper offices burning like a liner at sea. Tomorrow's morning papers, the Times over in Printing House Square, the Daily News, the Telegraph, all of them are being made tonight, and they are being made the way everything in this century is made at its finest pitch, by hand, at speed, letter by letter. Upstairs in the long gaslit composing room, the compositors stand at their frames, each man before a pair of shallow trays, the cases divided into little boxes, capital letters in the upper case, small letters in the lower, the type itself in tiny leaden pieces, mirror backwards, thousands to the case. The compositor reads his copy, a paragraph of tonight's parliamentary report, scrawled by a reporter an hour ago, and his right hand begins to dance over the boxes, picking up letter after letter without looking, setting each into the little steel rule in his left hand, nicks outward, spacing the words by feel at a good man's rate of a line a minute or better. He does not read what he sets exactly. The words pass through him from eye to fingers, the way music passes through a player, and meanwhile he carries on, in the composing room tradition, a low, unbroken conversation with his neighbour about pigeons. The room works against the clock, and the clock is the dawn. Column by column the paper assembles, the leader written at midnight, set at 1, the late telegrams from the continent, from America by the Atlantic cable, walked upstairs damp from the instrument room, the reporter's longhand relayed from the gallery of the house, which sat late again. The columns of set type are locked with wedges into iron frames the size of the page, a form it is called, and a full one is a 2-man lift and carried down to the foundry to be moulded, and the moulds cast into curved plates of hot metal, and the plates bolted round the cylinders of the great machines in the basement. And then, toward 3 or 4 o'clock, the building changes its note. The presses start. The floor takes up a steady drumming tremble felt in the pavement outside. The web of paper flies through the cylinders, and the morning paper exists tens of thousands of copies an hour, folded, counted, bundled, and run out to the waiting carts and the early trains, so that the leader written at midnight in this lit room will be propped against the marmalade in 100,000 households by 9. The men come out at dawn with the day's edition under their arms, blinking in the grey light, passing the first clerks coming in 2 Londons, brushing shoulders on the same pavement, one finishing, one beginning, each privately certain the other has the easier life. And the news itself, that made all the hurry. By tomorrow night it will be old, and the whole thing will be done again. Every letter of it, from the first line of copy to the last bolted plate. Nobody in the composing room finds this futile. It is the opposite of futile. It is the daily rebuilding of the world in 26 leaden letters, finished before breakfast, signed by no one. Between Fleet Street and the morning, though, there is still the deepest part of the night to cross, the hours when even the night trades thin out, and the city comes as close as it ever comes to true stillness. Let us walk down to the river for it. The Thames at 2 in the morning is the widest silence in London. Between the embankment lamps, that double string of gaslights curving away toward Westminster, hung above the water like a necklace laid out on dark velvet, the river moves through the middle of the city the way sleep moves through a body, slow, tidal, absolutely indifferent to the clocks. The tide is ebbing now. You can hear it if you stand still at the parapet. A long, soft, continuous breathing against the stone, the knock of a mooring chain somewhere below, the creak of a barge leaning on its neighbour. The river has its own night population, sparser than the streets and older. The barges lie moored in tiers off the wharves, laden and sheeted for the morning, and on some of them a barge family sleeps aboard, a stovepipe breathing a thread of smoke above the cabin hatch, a dog on watch on the hatch itself with his chin on his paws. Off the pool below London Bridge, the riding lights of the colliers and coasters burn at anchor, each light doubled in the black water. A watchman keeps the deck of each, and pipes glow small and red along the tiers like fireflies that have learnt patience. Now and then, a late waterman's skiff crosses on some errand between ship and stair, oars creaking in the rowlocks, and the sound carries the whole width of the river as though the water itself were passing the message along. On the bridges, the lamps burn over empty roadways. Crossing London Bridge now, at the hour when its daytime crowds are all in their beds, this bridge over which 12 hours from now the densest foot traffic in the world will pour, you can stop in the middle, in the exact centre of the whole metropolis, and hear the water and nothing else. Upstream, the clock tower at Westminster shows its lit face like a second moon, and when Big Ben strikes 2, the sound comes down the river in slow rings, bell note after bell note laid on the water, and is answered, one town after another, by the church clocks of the whole city, 100 steeples counting the same 2 strokes at slightly different speeds, the way a round is sung, until the counting fades out at the edges of London, somewhere over the dark marshes, and the silence closes back over the river like water behind a boat. The embankment itself is the newest thing in view, though it looks eternal. These granite walls and gaslit pavements were mudflats within living memory until the great engineer Bazalgette drove his river wall along the shore and buried inside it, out of sight and out of smell, the intercepting sewers that carried London's old shame away eastward and laid a public garden on top. The Victorians are proudest of exactly this kind of thing, and at night you can feel why, under your boots as you stand at the parapet, unseen and unheard. The buried rivers of the city's plumbing are doing their work as they do every hour of every year. The tide breathes, the lamps burn on their iron dolphins, and the whole colossal machine of London runs on in the dark without a single hand visibly on any lever. If the streets at midnight taught us that someone is awake so the city may sleep, the river at 2 teaches the gentler lesson underneath it, that some of the keeping is done by things, by walls and mains and tides and lamps, set going by people long since gone to bed or gone altogether, and faithful still. A city seen from its river at night is a promise that a great many people have kept. We turn our backs on the water now and climb the stairs by the bridge and pause at a lit doorway on the way north. because one house in every district of London sleeps in a manner all its own, dressed and ready and listening. The fire station at night shows one red lamp over its door and one lit window, the watchroom, where a fireman of the Metropolitan Fire Brigade sits his spell of duty beside the quietest and most attended to instrument in London, the telegraph that connects his station to the street alarms and to every other station in the brigade. The watchroom is small and very warm and smells of brass polish and oilskin. The logbook lies open on the desk with the night's entries in a round fair hand. 10 o'clock, all correct. 11 o'clock, all correct. And the clock ticks, and the instrument with nothing to say says nothing, which is exactly what everyone in the building wants of it. Behind the watchroom, the station sleeps in a state of readiness the age is quietly proud of, and rightly. The engines stand facing the doors, fires laid in their boilers ready for one match, lamps trimmed, hose flaked down just so. The horses doze in their stalls with their harness hanging over them on quick-release gear, collars open, so that the whole equipage the age has timed it lovingly with stopwatches can be horsed, manned, lit, and out of the doors inside a couple of minutes from a standing start in the middle of the night. Upstairs, the men of the watch sleep in their quarters, half-dressed by regulation, boots and leggings standing ready at each bedside in the position the age's drill has decreed. The men are sailors, most of them, by the brigade's own preference, men already broken to watches, heights, ropes and discipline, and they sleep the way sailors sleep, completely and provisionally, one ear on duty. On most nights, and tonight, on our route, is one of them, nothing happens at all. The watch changes at midnight with a murmur and an entry in the log. Cocoa is made, the horses shift their feet, the instrument holds its peace from dusk to dawn, and the entire apparatus of readiness ripens quietly toward a morning in which it was never needed. It is the purest form of the night city's whole idea. Here are men paid, trained, drilled and equipped to spend the night not being called upon, the watch kept perfect, precisely so that it stays uneventful sleep in 500,000 bedrooms roundabout, made a little deeper by the existence of a lit window nobody in those bedrooms has ever seen. The red lamp burns, the log fills up with all correct, and we walk on north into the deepest hour of all. "3 o'clock is the bottom of London's night, the slack water between the last of the evening and the first of the morning, when the theatres are 3 hours cold, the markets not yet stirring, and the streets are handed over entirely to the lamps and the cats and the beat. Like any residential street now, and the stillness has a texture you can almost touch. Mile after mile of terraced houses stand shoulder to shoulder in the gaslight, with their blinds down like closed eyelids behind every dark first-floor window, sleepers. Behind the attic panes, the servant girls, deepest asleep of anyone because they will be up first. Down the area steps, the kitchen fires bank to a red seed under their ash, keeping tomorrow alive inside tonight. The little front gardens hold their breath. A cat crosses the road on some silent professional business of her own, freezes a moment in the lamp pool and pours herself over a wall. Far off streets away, a single set of footsteps rings on the pavement, unhurried, regular, growing neither nearer nor farther, the beat doing its slow arithmetic around and around the sleeping blocks as we learned to expect of it hours ago. The sounds of 3 o'clock are few enough to collect. The gas lamps themselves, if you stand quite close, keep up a faint companionable purr, the small voice of the flame in the glass, which children put to bed by these lamps will remember all their lives as the sound the light made. A watchdog answers another watchdog across a quarter of a mile of gardens, both of them more sociable than alarmed, and gives it up. Somewhere a sash window is eased down by an old gentleman defeated by his own wakefulness. The night air was blamed for everything in this century, and he means to take no chances. And underneath all of it, so constant you must remind yourself to hear it, the low world-edge murmur that never quite stops even now. A late cab far off, the river trade, the railways breathing in their cuttings, London's heartbeat at its slowest, but never at nothing. Even the fog, when it comes, and on many an autumn and winter night it comes, belongs to the furniture of the hour. It arrives off the river and the low grounds in slow rehearsal. First a softening, each gas lamp growing a halo like a dandelion gone to seed. Then a thickening, the far end of the street dissolving, sounds arriving damp and rounded at the edges. Until on the thick nights the city is wrapped to the chimney pots in a wool of its own coal smoke and river mist, and the lamps become a row of blurred moons, and the beat constable navigates his own streets by the railings and his 20 years of knowing them. The fogs are no one's friend. By day Londoners grumble about them in the same breath as the income tax, but at 4 in the morning, from inside a warm bed, the fog is almost an ally. It tucks the city in, muffles the last of its noises, and makes of every bedroom a ship's cabin, snug and provisioned, riding at anchor in a soft grey sea. And through the fog at the bottom of the night come the small hour's own tradesmen, the ones whose work exists only because everyone else is unconscious, the night soil men with their quiet cart, doing the necessary unmentionable and doing it well before witnesses are up. The sewer flushers in their tall boots, lifting a grating at the empty crossroads to go down to the buried rivers on the tide's timetable, not the clocks. The telegraph linesman making good a wire while no messages press. The railway plate layers out on the silent metals with their lanterns, tapping and tightening, because 3 to 5 in the morning is the only parenthesis in the timetable when the iron roads belong to the men who mend them and not the trains. None of these trades will be thanked by name tomorrow. All of them will have made tomorrow slightly but genuinely better than it would have been, which is as much as most of us manage awake, and they manage it every night, asleep on the world's behalf while the world is asleep on theirs. Before the night turns, let us do what the night itself does and pass through one front door without opening it, any door, in any terrace, in any district. Say this one, with the holly knocker, third along from the lamp, and stand a while inside a London house asleep. The hall clock has the ground floor to itself and makes the most of it, tick and tock, and the little catch of breath a long case clock takes before it strikes, and then 3 soft strokes into the darkness, acknowledged by nobody. The gas in the hall is turned down to a bead, a blue-gold seed of flame kept burning at the bracket all night in many houses, small as a grain of wheat, for the comfort of anyone crossing the landing and for the easier lighting of morning, and by its glimmer the house arranges itself in shades of brown and deeper brown. The hat stand with its family of hats, the umbrellas furled in their stand like roosting birds, the barometer resolving on change, the stair carpet climbing up into the dark with its brass rods gleaming faintly, rod above rod, like the rungs of a ladder into sleep. Below, the kitchen keeps the warmth of the evening the way a stone keeps the sun. The range is banked, that nightly rite we have seen in other houses on other nights, the fire buried alive under small coal and ash to smoulder until morning, and it ticks and settles and sighs to itself through the small hours, the household's red heart beating slow. The cat has the hearthrug and has earned nothing of the kind. On the dresser the crockery stands in ranks, the copper kettle sits on the hob with its lid ajar, already half thinking about breakfast. A cricket somewhere in the brickwork behind the range, the luckiest of lodgers, the age insists, files one small note against the silence and thinks better of it. Up the stairs, past the turned-down gas, the house is laid out in sleep by stories, exactly as its architecture always intended. The master and mistress behind the first-floor door, the heavy curtains drawn against the night air on principle, his watch ticking on the night table in answer to the clock below. The children on the floor above, in the night nursery with the tiny nightlight burning in its saucer of water, a speck of flame no bigger than a pea. set there so that waking in the dark is never quite waking in the dark, the fireguard's brass wires catching its glow, the rocking horse standing watch with one glass eye, and at the very top under the slates the servants' plain beds, the soundest sleep in the house and the shortest allowance of it, the alarm clock set for 5 facing the wall as if to spare everyone the sight. Every floor breathes at its own pace. The house holds them all, banked fire below, small flames between, slates above like a hand cupped round a match in the wind. And what the house is doing, the street is doing. And what the street is doing, the parish is doing. And so on outward, terrace by terrace, square by square, 4 million sleepers deep, to the dark market gardens at the edge of everything. This is what all of it is for: the lamps, the beat, the watchroom, the banked range, the nightlight in the saucer. This ordinary miracle, repeated along every street in the capital, of a family unconscious and perfectly safe. 8 hours entrusted to strangers and machinery and small flames, and the trust honored, tonight as every night. We came in without opening the door. We leave the same way, and the hall clock, catching its breath, strikes the half-hour behind us. We have been walking one night, but the lamplighter walks them all, and if you asked him he would tell you, no 2 nights of the year are the same night, and the city asleep has 4 seasons as surely as the city awake. The winter night is the longest and the most thoroughly kept. Lighting up comes before 4 in the afternoon. The lamplighter makes his round while the school children are still walking home, and his lamps must stand 16 hours. On the iron-hard nights, the beat constable's breath goes before him down the street like a small private fog. The coffee stalls do their bravest trade. The crossing sweepers' brooms stand frozen in the corners, and the watermen light braziers by the cab stands, coke fires in iron baskets, glowing companionably at the kerb, around which the night's whole caste warms itself in shifts, hands spread to the red glow, horses steaming gently in their rugs. Snow, when it comes, performs its one great conjuring trick on the capital. London wakes to a city with the sound turned off, wheels muffled, hooves muffled, the first carts moving hushed as thoughts, and for one morning the loudest town on earth whispers. The spring night is the softening. The lamps go later and later to their lighting as the almanac relents. The evening air over the park smells suddenly of turned earth and green. The market wagons come in, heaped with the first of the season, and the salesmen handle the early strawberries like state papers. The birds begin their famous impertinence. The sparrows of London never truly submitted to nighttime at all. And in spring, the blackbirds start the dawn chorus in the dark, from chimney pots, a good hour before there is any dawn to sing about, so that the small hours of a May night are stitched all over with song delivered to no audience but the beat. The summer night is hardly a night at all, and the night trades take their ease in it. Lighting up comes toward 9. The lamplighters round and the last omnibus run in a lingering violet dusk. The small hours are short and mild and smell of dust and roses over the garden walls. Doors stand open late. The constable's beat is a promenade. In the great heats the town sleeps badly and knows itself windows up everywhere, and the night full of the small sounds of wakefulness. A baby aired on a shoulder at a window, a pipe smoked on a doorstep at midnight in shirt sleeves, and dawn comes almost before the last lamps were worth the lighting, the sky whitening over the river at 3, the markets doing their business in broad day, and the autumn night is the turning home. The first fogs come up the river on the first cold tides. The lamps step earlier and earlier down the almanac's page. The braziers reappear at the stands like migratory birds returning, and the city, which sprawled outdoors all summer, draws itself back around its hearths, the season of banked fires beginning again, the smell of coal smoke settling over the roofs like a blanket shaken out for winter. The whole vast apparatus of the London night lamps, watch, warmth, bread leaning in for the long, dark stretch it was all really built for. The night city has no favorite season. It keeps them all alike. But if it had one, it would be this, the season when the sleepers need it most, and it is most itself. All night, underneath everything we have walked through, there has been one sound stitching the hours together, and it is time we followed it home. The bells. Every quarter of every hour, all night, the church clocks of London speak first the Westminster chime floating up the river, then the answers spreading outward across the roofs, parish by parish, each clock a few seconds behind or ahead of its neighbours, so that the hour arrives over the city not as a stroke, but as a slow silver ripple, a minute wide, that begins by the river and dies away somewhere out in the market gardens. The sleepers do not hear it exactly, but they would miss it. Ask anyone who has moved from London to the deep country. The first week of true silence, they will tell you, kept them awake. The bells are the city's pulse made audible, and a Londoner sleeps on them the way a sailor sleeps on the engines. Now a clock is a promise, and promises need keeping, and so there exists, in this city of night trades, the quietest trade of them all, the clockwinders. The great public clocks are wound and set on their appointed days by men who climb for a living up the dark spiral stairs of 100 towers, ladder by ladder, past the silent bells with their tonnage of patience, to the little chambers where the movements live behind glass, ticking enormously in the cold. There the winder puts his back into the crank of the weights, hauling up out of the shaft the half-ton of stored falling that is, quite literally, what makes the time pass. He checks the clock against the pocket chronometer he carries like a relic. He notes the seconds of error in a book that may go back 60 years in 3 different clerkly hands, and he climbs down and goes on to the next tower, leaving the time wound up behind him. At Westminster, the great clock gets its winding 3 times a week, and its keepers hold it famously to within a second or two, the proudest timepiece in the empire, checked against the stars at Greenwich and telegraphed true each morning. For that is the deepest thing under this chapter, and it deserves saying slowly. The time itself comes from the night sky and has been taken fresh from it, nightly, for 200 years, a few miles down the river at Greenwich. There, on the hill above the sleeping park, on clear nights, an astronomer sits at the transit instrument in a cold and silent room, watching chosen stars cross the spider line in the eyepiece and marking, to a fraction of a second, the moment each one keeps its ancient appointment with the meridian. The stars are the master clock. The observatory's regulators are set by them, and from those regulators by telegraph wire, the true second is dealt out across the country every morning to the post office, to the railways, to the clockmakers' shops that hang a Greenwich time sign in the window, and so, by winding key and church bell, to every mantelpiece and every steeple and every sleeper in London. When the bells ripple over the roofs at 3, that is what you are hearing, at the end of its long journey. Starlight, translated patiently into bronze, telling 4 million unconscious people that all is well and the universe is punctual. The watchmen keep the streets, and the winders keep the clocks, and the stars keep the winders honest. Nobody in this chain has ever much considered the poetry of it. They consider the accuracy, which is better. Sleep in a city like that. It knows what time it is. One glow on the horizon never dims through any of this, and it is not the dawn, not yet. Away eastward and southward, at Beckton and Vauxhall and the Old Kent Road, the sky holds a low, steady furnace light all night long, the gasworks stoking. It is worth one look before morning, because everything we have walked through tonight burns at the end of a pipe that begins there. Every lamp we have passed tonight, the street lamps, the theatre globes, the composing room jets, the little flame purring in the hall of every house with a penny for the meter, is the far end of a single buried system, and at the near end of it, on the flat lands by the river, the retort houses of the gasworks glow through their own smoke like a range of small tame volcanoes. Inside, the night shift is stoking. The retorts stand in banked rows, each a long iron oven charged with coal. The stokers work down the line in singlets, shining with the heat, drawing each retort in turn. The door swung open on a blast of orange light. The spent coke raked out in a rush of sparks like a comet emptied onto the floor. The fresh charge shot in, the door clanged home, and onto the next, and the next, in a rhythm as old as the trade, 2 men to a team, timed like oarsmen. It is the hottest work in London, and they are the hardest worked men in it, and they know their own necessity. From these ovens, the coal gas rises, is cooled and washed and purified through the great vessels ranged outside in the dark, and climbs at last into the gasholders, those enormous iron drums rising and falling in their frames as the city breathes light in and out, the biggest moving things in London and among the quietest, standing against the night sky along the eastern river like the shields of giants laid down flat. All night the pressure in the mains is governed from here, and the governing has a shape. As evening came on and 1,000,000 jets were lit, the holders sank slowly on their guides, giving out their stored millions of feet. Through the small hours they rest. Toward dawn, as the street lamps go out, but the kitchen fires and early workshops come on, the balance shifts again. The men at the work speak of the town's demand the way sailors speak of weather, a thing with moods and seasons. Saturday nights and foggy Tuesdays, and they can read the whole sleeping city from a pressure gauge. London's nights, its dinners, its theatres, its bedtimes, all legible in the slow rise and fall of an iron drum by the Thames. By 4 o'clock the stoker's shift is deep in its second wind, and the works settle into the steadiest hour of their steady roar. There is a strange comfort in standing at a good distance under that low furnace glow in the sky, knowing what it is, the city's light being made ahead of the city's need, tonight as every night, by men whose names the lit streets will never learn. The lamplighter lit the lamps, these men fill them. Between the two of them, London has not been truly dark for most of a century, and now at last the night begins to tilt. Away in the east, nothing shows, yet the sky over Essex is as black as it was at midnight, but the city knows before the sky does. Along 100 roads on the map's edges, wheels have begun to turn toward the centre. In Covent Garden and Billingsgate and Smithfield, gates are being unbarred and gas rings lit in the market taverns. The first trains of the morning are being made up in the yards. The deepest hour is over. London is about to start waking up, and it wakes the way it fell asleep. From the bottom, market first, gently in the dark. If you want to see tomorrow arrive in London, you do not watch the sky. You stand at the corner of Covent Garden a little after 4, in the dark, and you listen for wheels. They come in from every road at once, from Kent and Surrey, over the bridges, from Middlesex and Essex down the turnpikes, the market gardeners' wagons, loaded high the evening before and driven through the sleeping suburbs half the night. Cabbages built into green walls, potatoes in hundredweight sacks, carrots and turnips and onions, baskets of peas picked yesterday afternoon, strawberries in their season riding on spring cushions of straw, flowers in tight paper hundreds. The drivers have dozed the last miles. The horses know the road better than they do, and now the whole slow fleet converges on the piazza and packs itself into the surrounding streets, axle to axle, and waits for the market bell, while the coffee stalls at the market's edge do the trade of their lives. Then the garden lights its gas, the bell goes, and the dark explodes gently into commerce. Under the iron and glass roofs of the market halls, the salesmen's stands are already dressed. The gaslight on the piled produce makes the whole place look like a harvest festival got up by a theatre company, and the buying begins. greengrocers from every quarter of London, shopkeepers, costermongers by the hundred with their barrows, hotel stewards, the buyers for the great houses, all of them handling, smelling, disparaging and purchasing at a pace that would embarrass the stock exchange. The air fills with the market's own language, a price called, a counterbid groaned at, the auctioneer somewhere rattling through lots of cauliflowers like a psalm read against the clock, and everywhere through the crowd go the porters, who are the garden's true aristocracy. Watch a Covent Garden porter and you will not soon forget him. A man walking fast and level through a dense crowd with a column of loaded round baskets balanced on his head, 6, 8, 10 baskets high, a swaying tower taller than himself, steadied by nothing but a folded pad on his crown and a lifetime of knowing exactly where the weight lives. Porters race each other on occasion for wages, fully loaded. They are paid by the load and proud as admirals, and the crowd parts for a loaded porter as it parts for nobody else in London barring the Queen. By 6, the great wholesale tide is past its height. The wagons are emptying, the barrows are dispersing into the streets of the whole metropolis like seeds off a head, and the flower market comes into its softest hour, when the flower girls buy their stock violets and moss roses bunched by candlelight, primroses in spring by the basketful to sell on the curbs of the West End through the day. A city that was asleep 2 hours ago is now provisioning itself for the next 24 with a roar of good-natured haggling under gaslight, and not one Londoner in 100 buying a cabbage at a corner shop this afternoon will think about the wagon on the dark road, the bell at 5, or the man with a tower of baskets on his head, which is by now an old story tonight. The morning, like the night, is run by people nobody thinks about, and run beautifully, and Covent Garden is only the greenest corner of the waking. Across the city, the other great markets are lighting up on the same clock, and the river one is worth the walk, because there the morning arrives smelling of the sea. Down by London Bridge, on the river's edge, Billingsgate Market has been filling since before dawn with the one cargo that will not wait. The night's fish come up on the tide, and the early trains trawl fish from the North Sea grounds packed in ice, herring in their silver thousands, salmon from Scotland in matting, oysters by the barrel from the Essex and Kent beds, shellfish, eels alive in tanks from the Dutch boats that have moored off this stair for 200 years. At 5 o'clock the gates open, the bell rings, and Billingsgate goes from stillness to full cry in the time it takes to draw breath. It is the loudest market in London and knows it. The porters in their strange and famous headgear, the bobbing hat, a flat-topped leather and wicker helmet like a soldier's shako built for cargo, on which a man carries 100 weight of wet fish at a jog trot up the slippery stones from the wharf, load after load all morning. The salesmen crying their lots from their stands, the buyers fishmongers from every high street, the fried fishmen, the costermongers who will walk 10 miles today behind a barrow of herrings, pressing 3 deep round every auction. The vocabulary of Billingsgate is a legend politely unrecorded. The pace is tremendous. The whole market smells of tide and ice and money. And by 9 o'clock it will all be over, the fish gone out across London in vans and barrows and baskets, the stones sluiced down, the great shed suddenly quiet, off duty until the tide brings tomorrow up the river. Away north in the city, on the same clock, Smithfield's iron halls are doing the same office for the morning's meat under their long rows of gas stars. And at a dozen lesser markets, the Haymarkets, the Borough vegetable market south of the river, the same bell and gaslight ritual is running its course. This is how a metropolis of 4 million is fed with no refrigeration to speak of, and no lorries at all. By night, moving what the day will eat, every single night, on hooves and wheels and shoulders and the tide, timed to the hour, without a plan on any wall anywhere, only 10,000 people who each know their own part of it perfectly, meshing like the gears of a watch nobody wound, because it has never been allowed to stop. Carry that thought back westward through the emptying market streets, because overhead at last the sky is turning. It is coming on towards 6 o'clock, and the east has gone from black to a deep smoked blue, and along 1,000 miles of pavement the gas lamps are beginning to look less necessary than they did. The night is ending. What remains is to watch London wake and to keep one last appointment with a man we met at dusk carrying a ladder. London wakes in the same order every morning, and it wakes from the bottom up. The poorest and hardest working hours of the morning come first, and the silk dressing gowns come last, and in between there is a procession as fixed as the tide tables. First, while the sky is still more night than day, come the milk carts and the milkwomen. The clink and roll of the churns is many a light sleeper's first sound of morning, walking their rounds from the dairies, ladling the halfpennyworths and pennyworths at area doors into the jugs left out overnight, chalking the score on the doorpost. With them come the watercress sellers, up from the markets with their flat baskets of green, crying the first street cry of the day in the grey light, fresh watercress being half the poor man's breakfast and all of his salad. And the early coffee stalls at the corners find their second great custom of the 24, the going-to-work trade, mechanics and dockmen and builders' labourers with their tools on their shoulders, drinking standing up in the cold, with their breath and the urns steam mixing under the lamp. Then the knocker-up goes down the terraced streets of the working quarters, a figure whose whole profession is other people's mornings, an old man or a brisk widow with a long light cane, or a pea-shooter in the northern fashion, tapping at the upper window panes down one side of a street and up the other, and waiting at each until a shape stirs behind the glass and confirms itself awake, for a penny or two a week per window. The knocker-up wakes the men who stoke the boilers and open the gates and drive the first omnibuses. Nobody wakes the knocker-up. That mystery is his trade secret and the standing joke of every street he serves. Now the railways lift their voices. The termini have been alive for an hour with the fish and meat and milk trains, the newspaper trains loading Fleet Street's night work for the country breakfast tables. At 6, the first workmen's trains come in over the viaducts, the cheap early trains the law requires, a penny or twopence the journey, packed with tool bags and pipe smoke, and from the suburbs on every side the walking regiments are on the roads, thousands upon thousands of men converging on the docks, the yards, the breweries, the building sites, boots on pavement in a sound like soft continuous rain, growing street by street as the sky lightens. The shops begin to take their shutters down, the same boys who put them up last night, taking them down in the same chalk-numbered order, yawning. The first smoke climbs from 100,000 relit kitchen fires as the servant girls up at 5 and 6 rake out the ashes the night banked and coax the day's flame from the seed the night kept. The postmen are walking out of the district offices in red-collared lines for the first delivery of the day, their bags fat with everything St. Martin's Le Grand sorted while we watched, and the night trades, one by one, hand over and stand down. The cab stands change horses and men. The night constables turn in at their stations, try the last door of the last round, and file into the section house kitchen where the cocoa is. The bakers come up their area steps into the daylight like sailors coming ashore. The Covent Garden wagons, empty, take the bridges south and east against the incoming tide of workers, drivers asleep again, horses again in charge. The great machine does not stop to change shifts. It changes them rolling, wheel meshing into wheel, so smoothly that there is no single minute of which you could say, now the night ended, now the day began. There is only the light growing, and the lamps paling, and a man with a ladder and a pole, out again along his own 80 lamps, walking the round backwards. He comes up the street in the grey of the morning, exactly as he came down it in the blue of the evening, the same route in reverse, and at each column he reaches up with the pole through the little door and turns the cock, and the flame that has stood its watch all night through the theatre crowds and the fog, and the Beats 20 circuits and the market wagons and everything else we have seen since dusk, dips, flutters once, and goes out. The lamp does not go dark. The morning has already seen to that. It simply stops being needed, which is a gentler retirement. Down the whole length of the street the lamps go out one by one behind him, like a sentence being unsaid, and the ordinary daylight, which needs no man to carry it a ladder, takes over the world. By full morning the lamplighter is home and asleep, and London is bellowing about its daytime business over his head, and the whole cast of tonight is asleep around him across the breadth of the city, the cabmen, the sorters, the stokers, the compositors, the porters, the constable of the night relief with his boots at last off, sleeping through the noise as soundly as the noise slept through their working. Their night's work is all around the day, invisible because it succeeded. The streets were lit, so no one thought about light. The doors were tried, so no one thought about doors. The bread is on the table, the paper is by the plate, the fish is on the ice, the letter from Edinburgh is on the mat. Successful night in a great city is a night nobody remembers in the morning, and tonight, once again, London will demand another one, and once again Dusk going round like a lamplighter, lighting the same lamps in the same order the night city will provide it. That is the other city we have walked through, not the London of processions and parliaments, but the London that comes on duty when the blinds come down, perhaps 100,000 strong, all told, counting every watchman and stoker and sorter and baker and market man of them, the city that works while the city sleeps, each night worker awake in a small pool of lamplight or firelight, with 4 million sleepers arranged around them in the dark. They did not think of it as keeping watch over anybody. It was work, and it was wages, and the tea was wet and the small hours were long. But stand back far enough as a hilltop at dusk, where we began, and it is hard to call it anything else, a whole city breathing quietly in the dark, and around it sleep, all night, every night, a ring of small lights, and at every light someone awake. And that is where we shall leave London, provisioned, delivered, patrolled, lit, put out, and roaring cheerfully into its morning, because our own night has gone the other way and wants finishing. Let the day city fade behind us now, and come back one last time slowly to the quiet. The day city is roaring now behind us, but we are not going with it. We are going back through the night we walked, the other way, slowly, picking up the quiet as we go, because that is the privilege of the listener. The lamplighter must sleep by day, the constable must sleep by day, but you may fold the whole night up and keep it, and sleep inside it now. Go back then, back past the milk carts and the chalk doorposts, back past the shutters coming down, until the street's empty again, and the lamps are burning again, and it is the deep of the night once more, and will stay so now for as long as you need it to. The lamp outside is lit. It will stay lit all night, that is settled. A man saw to it at dusk, and another will see to it at dawn, and between them the little flame purrs in its glass like something small and warm asleep on a shelf, and the light it lays on the ceiling through the blinds does not move, except when the wind leans on it, and then only the way water moves under a boat that is safely moored. The doors are tried. Up the street and down it, a hand you will never see has tested every latch and found every one fast, and gone on unhurried at 2.5 miles an hour, and will come round again 20 minutes no more, and try them all again. There is nothing in the street but the lamplight. The footsteps you hear are the right footsteps. They know this pavement better than anyone alive, and they are paid to walk it until morning, and they will be paid again tomorrow night. The fires are banked. In the kitchen below, in 10,000 kitchens below, the coals are sleeping under their ash, the way you are sleeping under your blankets, Warm cores wrapped soft, keeping until morning. Nothing needs feeding, nothing needs watching. The kettle sits on the hob with its lid ajar, and all the time in the world, the bread is rising. Under the pavements, in the warm rooms below the gratings, the dough is breathing under its cloths, and the ovens are coming quietly to their heat, and men with flour on their forearms are working without hurry toward a morning that is still hours away and completely certain. Your breakfast already exists. It is simply not ready yet. Neither are you. Neither of you needs to be. The letters are traveling. Somewhere in the dark counties a lit carriage is swaying north with its pigeonholes and its lamps, and the letter with your name on it. There is always a letter with your name on it, somewhere. Coming is sorted and sealed, and riding the night mail. Hands you will never shake, passing it along through the small hours, closer by a county every time the clock strikes. The river is ebbing. Under the bridge lamps, the water is going down to the sea, the way it has gone down twice a day since before there was a bridge, or a lamp, or a city. Softly, along the walls the engineers built, past the barges asleep in their tears, and the tide will turn before dawn and come back up to Billingsgate with the fish, as it did yesterday, as it will do tomorrow. The river needs no one awake. It keeps its own watch. The tower is locked. It was locked at 10 with a lantern and the old words, as it was locked last night, as it has been locked every night for 500 years. And behind that oldest bolt in England, the whole city lies inside the same habit of safety, night after night after night, an unbroken chain of all's wells, reaching back further than anyone's grandmother's grandmother, and forward, link by link through to night, to morning. And the watchers are at their posts and will not leave them. The firemen in the warm watchroom, logging all correct at the top of each silent hour. The night porter under his one lamp, with 5 floors of sleep above him. The signalman in his lit box above the empty rails. The stokers at the bright doors, filling the great drums with tomorrow evening's light. The cabman dozing at the stand, the coffee stall hissing at the curb, the sorter's hand moving over the pigeonholes, sure as a bird coming home. None of them knows about you. All of them are, without knowing it, on your side. That is what a city is at 3 in the morning. The largest kindness ever organized, run all night by tired ordinary people, none of whom would call it kindness, all of whom would simply say the lamps must be lit, mustn't they? The doors must be tried, the bread must be made. So let them have it, the night shift. Let the lamplighter have his round, and the constable his beat. Let the porter have his tower of baskets in the morning, you will not be awake to see. Let the bells of the 100 steeples count the small hours to each other across the roofs, quietly, taking their time from Westminster, and let the counting fade at the edges of the city over the dark market gardens, where the wagons are already loading by lantern light for a market you may sleep through, and a morning that will manage perfectly well without you. The lamp is lit, the door is tried, the fire is banked, the bread is rising, the watch is kept, London is asleep, and someone is awake so that it may be, and tonight that someone is not you. Good night. The lamps are burning, all of them, the whole chain, all the way to the river. There go the bells again. 3 o'clock. Let them count for you. Footsteps in the street, the right footsteps, trying the doors, all fast, all well. The fire is banked, the bread is rising, the mail is running north under the moon. All's well, all's well. Good night.